We easily think of our worldview as something personal, something to keep to ourselves, that it has no implications of the society we build up. But what if that isn't true? What if our deepest assumptions about reality are already shaping our politics, and we don't even realize it? In this video, I'd like to explore exactly that. And you don't need to share my worldview. This is simply an invitation to explore and play around with different perspectives. Hello, my friend, and welcome to this exploration. I want to deep dive into the question of, does it really matter how we view reality? And I'd like to say that it does. It really does. All the way from how we move in the world ourselves until the bigger picture, how we shape our societies, how politics are influenced, or what metaphysical model is the predominant one. Now that's a big claim. And actually this is one of the things that makes me so passionate about sharing the non-dual understanding publicly with you on platforms. Because I think that we're missing out on how we shape our society based on the worldview, the metaphysical model we have today, which is materialism. Because if that's the foundation that we form our policies based on, it has certain like hidden assumptions that most of us aren't even aware of. We take them for truth, we take them for granted. And if that was how reality actually is, well, then it would make sense to have them as foundation, as starting points. But if we don't know that for sure, it might not be so beneficial to start from there. Like, the dominant one in the West, the way our societies, our economies are founded on, is materialism. And materialism basically assumes that there is matter out there, and when it becomes complex enough, such as my body and my nervous system, my consciousness pops up from my brain. And that has implications. For example, it implies, or it governs how we view life and death. And our societies are pretty much founded on that there is a me. Like, the sense of me starts when I'm born, or ish, somewhere in the uterus, perceiving to birth, and it ends when I die. And we take that for granted. Materialism, since it implies that my consciousness, my inner world, exists when the nervous system is complex enough to produce consciousness. And thus, when the brain is deteriorating, when it stops firing, when it, decomposes, then my inner world will naturally stop. If that isn't true, the whole model falls. So even if some of us have a materialistic worldview, but we still believe in a soul or in heaven or in some kind of afterlife, the model itself is built on the foundation. It has no room to say that life continues after the nervous system deteriorates. So we don't take that into account. We kind of put it into, that's a personal belief, and that's a private affair. What we fail to take into consideration, that I would argue that it's not a private affair. Believing in an afterlife or not, for instance, is already ingrained in our societies. We just don't see that we have kind of made the belief that there is no afterlife because we take materialism for granted. And if you think that I'm arguing that there is an afterlife, that isn't what this episode is about. First of all, you get to believe whatever you want to do. And so do I and everyone else. I'm just pointing to the fact that we have made an assumption, and then we built our whole societies based on that. And if you're a regular viewer to my channel, you might know that I personally don't believe that materialism is the most plausible explanation of reality. I believe that consciousness only model or non-dualism is more closely or more accurate model of reality. It doesn't have all the answer yet, and neither does materialism, but it's closer. And non-dualism, or consciousness-only model, doesn't suggest that our inner lives are created by our nervous system. It suggests that consciousness is primary. It exists before this body and this mind is formed. Thus, consciousness will keep existing after this body and this consciousness deteriorates. Yeah, so that opens up a completely different view of life and death. And there are different models of non-dualism, and the one that I'm usually referring to is analytical idealism, which is one model under the non-dual umbrella. And if we view it as though consciousness is primary, it existed before the body came into manifestation, then we can no longer be certain that our inner life started at birth, and we can no longer take for granted that it will cease to exist after death. What happens to it? Well, we can only speculate. We don't have a lot of science being done on the afterlife. Partly because science is also governed by the metaphysical model of materialism. And maybe partly because it's a difficult thing to do research on. It's not really clear or straightforward how one would do that. But if we were to take non-dualism seriously as a plausible reality, doesn't even have to be the one, but just open the door for that. Maybe it does have some advantages. That all of a sudden means that we don't know what happens after death. We don't know where we go, so to speak. And it also opens up the door of reincarnation. If our inner worlds are not guaranteed, so to speak, to disappear when the body dies, it is possible, it doesn't indicate, non-dualism or analytical idealism doesn't say that reincarnation is happening. It just opens the door for, it is not in violation of the model that reincarnation could happen. And I am super curious what that would do to our society if reincarnation was possible. I mean, that would change a lot, wouldn't it? If you knew, or if I knew, that there is a chance or a risk, depending on how you see it, that I will come back. And I don't necessarily need to believe in karma. I don't need to believe that how I acted in this world will impact where I end up in my next life. It could just be random. And that means that I cannot hoard resources right now to make sure that I have a fair life the next round. No, I might be, I don't know, randomly selected anywhere. I might not even be a human. I might become an animal. It's possible, we can't rule it out. Then it would be in my interest for myself and for my loved one, even without anything caring about strangers, not even in the picture anymore yet, but just for myself and for my loved ones, I would want to create a world where it's pretty fair rules for everyone. You don't need to belong to a certain family. You don't need to have certain qualities to have a good life, to have the opportunities to care for yourself, to be educated, to have fun, to love, to express yourself. No, we would want that for everyone. Purely on the basis that I might end up in these rules the next time around. There's like almost becomes a built-in fairness into the system. I don't want to have clusters of areas in the world where people are super poor. They don't have access to clean water. They don't have access to healthcare. They don't have access to education or freedom of speech. I wouldn't want that for myself. I wouldn't want that for my loved ones. So naturally, I wouldn't even want that to be part of the Wheel of Fortune. Now that would be a change to reality, to society, if we all of a sudden actually believed that was possible, that we will get another round and perhaps thousands of other lives. Yes. And even further than that, I mean, let's say I come back as an animal. Would I want to come back as a little piglet inside industrial animal farming complexes? Would I even be okay with the possibility of being born into industrialized meat production? Personally, it's a heartbreaking thought. Other people might be okay with it, but I think it would have implications. We would have to sit down with that question of how do I create fairness for my next life, for everyone's next life. Yeah. And I love exploring like this life and death and reincarnation. That's just one very concrete example how a different metaphysical model as the foundation of our society would impact the policies, would impact how we structure the rules of the game, how we share resources, what we call as basic human rights. And I mean, there are plenty more. If the non-dual theory is right, that means that the consciousness that looks out through your eyes is the consciousness that looks out through my eyes. In other words, the suffering you experience is actually pooled together with my suffering. It's experienced by the same consciousness. Now, how can not love and compassion and empathy flow from that? I mean, it does. Yeah. Mm. And I don't know for sure, of course, but I think the forces of the world today, the quantum physics, science, AI, is kind of forcing us to look at consciousness and intelligence. It's all pointing towards that we might start questioning the gaps in materialism. And maybe, just maybe, we're ready for something new. Another metaphysical model that does not in any way is a contradiction to science. And I'm not a non-dual evangelist. I'm only interested in what's actually true. What is reality? And for now, the most plausible explanation of reality that I've come across is non-dualism and analytical idealism specifically. Yeah, I think that was all for this little exploration. Perhaps I should introduce myself. My name is Josephine, and if you're new to this channel, then warmly welcome. And if you're a regular viewer, then warmly welcome back. And as always, please do share your reflections about this. I mean, this channel wouldn't be half as fun if I didn't get to interact with you. And everyone else listening, of course. Yes. Okay. Time to either go to the gym or get a coffee. We'll see. I hope to see you next time.